I think it is important to recognize at this point that as of today, the Ukraine war has been going on for 2 years. And it is worth pointing out that time and time and time again, as I have said on this channel, as I've said on Geoscope, as I've said on Friday Nights with Labour Social, if we give the Ukrainians the weapons they need, they can get the job done. They can hold off Russia. And more importantly, they can make, or at least go into a negotiating position with a far stronger hand than with, well, what we have seen repeatedly with, Tucker Carlson recently, when Putin once again reiterated his claim that he will not accept anything less than the total, absolute surrender of Ukraine. That is what he said. That is what his position is. And that at the moment is unfortunately what the West seems to be showing to Putin, that, oh, if you are willing to take on 2 years worth of sanctions and etc., you can wear down the resistance of the West, you can wear down the supply chain, and eventually you can just brute force your way to a victory. And as many Ukrainians have said, in fact, it was on the front of the Independent today, it is well worth reminding people, because I do believe that Ukrainians are right on this, that if Ukraine falls and Putin is allowed to take away his victory, essentially, from this, then the West will be next. It will be a NATO country. It will be likely a NATO country. And I've said before, that is the threat. That is the danger that is there. And still, to this day, people are not recognizing that Ukraine have succeeded, that they have held off, when many people were looking at this is going to be some sort of a walkover victory. Many people of those types are still maintaining the idea that, oh, you don't understand, Russia is actually really fighting with one arm behind the back. They're being, quote, kind to Ukraine at the moment, which, again, if committing war crimes like in Bucha and other areas that they have occupied is quote them, being nice, I'd hate to actually see what happens if they were actually trying. So I think it is important today to go over someone called David Sachs, because he has given a piece on Twitter. And even worse, this got liked and endorsed and agreed by Elon Musk. So I think it is worth going over this. But before we go over that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. Like I say, there's the links down below. There's the Patreon page. There's more donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, there is the like and share button that you can always click as well. So we're going to go over to this. Now, who is David Sachs first? Well, he runs a podcast called the All In Pod. He's also a very rich tech billionaire, which would understand why he is, good friends with Elon Musk. But I think his take here on Ukraine is very, very bad. Very, very bad. And I think he deserves to be called out on it. So he starts off with a war of lies. So, this is going to be a classic take here, as we've covered many times before. So, the war in Ukraine is based on lies. Lies about how it started. We'll get to that. And how it's going and how it will end. So, we are told that Ukraine is winning, when in fact it is losing. Well, I wouldn't even say that Ukraine is either winning nor losing at the moment. I'd say the fact that they are constantly holding off Russia, that they have reduced significantly the battlefield capacity of the Russians, is a testament to how hard the Ukrainians have fought on this. So, while you can't say for 100% that they are winning, you can't say for 100% that they are losing. I would far say they are doing a far better inflicting insane casualties on Russia at the moment And to keep on doing that, they need more and more ammo and weapons to be able to do that, to hold them off. So he continues, we are told that the war in Ukraine makes NATO stronger, when in fact it is depleting it. Really? Because of this war, we've had 2 new members join NATO, Finland and Sweden. I'd say that is making it a lot more stronger. But he continues saying, we are told that Ukraine's biggest problem is a lack of funds from the US Congress, when is it in fact the West cannot produce enough ammunition, a problem that will take years to fix. We are told that Russia is suffering greater casualties, when in fact Ukraine is running out of soldiers. Another problem money can't fix. So here's the thing. Yes, the big problem is that lack of US funding that is being held up by Congress. That is a big problem for Ukraine. That is causing shell shortages. But it is not just funds that is being sent. That is one of the things that even I really myself need to be talked about as well. It is not just money, it is equipment that is also being sent over. But it is a lot easier to say, funds, when really we should be calling it, funds and equipment that money is being sort of allocated for. The next problem, the West can't produce enough ammunition. Currently, at the moment, that certainly seems to be the case, but that is being fixed. That is being fixed a lot quicker than people are giving credit for. You've had Denmark recently give Ukraine a lot of other of its ammunition so it can replenish its own stocks. You've seen Denmark also as well bring on a new production facility. I've said this as well, that we in the UK as well need to focus on production here in the UK as well, not just here in the UK, but in Europe too. This is something that can be fixed and can be fixed very, very quickly, a lot quicker than he is saying, than years. And of course, we're told that Russia is suffering greater casualties when in fact Ukraine is running out of soldiers. No, Russia is suffering very, very big casualties. Very, very big. The official number, we don't know. But again, this is war. Of course, there are going to be casualties on both sides. Yes, Ukraine is a smaller country. Yes, it has fewer soldiers. But so far, from what we are seeing in some of the battles that we have seen, we are seeing, for every Ukrainian death, we are seeing 7 Russian soldiers die. So to have a casualty rate of 7-1, yes, 7-1, that's pretty good. Not only this, we have seen the morale problems this is causing in the Russian army. The fact that they are now having to turn to very extreme measures to, send their soldiers into what we have seen from Russian soldiers tell on Telegram and intercepted voice calls is an absolute meat grinder. They do not want to be there. You don't want to be involved in this fight. They are blaming their leaders, their commanders, for throwing them into suicidal assaults. That is Russia saying that. That is directly coming from Russian soldiers. So you tell me who's got the greater casualty rate. But remember, this is war. Of course, there are going to be casualties on both sides. But he continues. We are told that the world is with us, when in face of a global majority believes the US policy is the height of folly. What? Okay, where is this global majority that is telling us this US policy to supply Ukraine with aid is folly? Because I do not see that. I do not see that at all. We are told that there is no opportunity to make peace, when in fact we have rejected multiple opportunities for a negotiated settlement. So, first things first, what exactly were those negotiated settlements? Because if you're talking the one about the beginning of the war, which Ukraine turned down, and quite rightly, after discovering the horrific war crimes that had been uncovered, and them saying countless times that not only can they not trust Russia, but they are worried about Putin freezing this conflict for like, 4 or 5 years, and then coming back to start again. What the Ukrainians want is they want cast iron guarantees that Putin cannot just come back and do this again. That is what they are scared of. That is what they are worried about. And they have been proven they are right in this because they have had two peace agreements, the Minsk peace agreements, Minsk 1 and Minsk 2, where Ukraine was forced by Russia into those peace agreements. And both times, Russia has broken those peace agreements, doing exactly what the Ukrainians are worried about, that Putin would come in, take something, he would sign a peace agreement or force them into signing one, and he would later come back. They do not want to be in a situation where they sign Minsk 3 only for Putin to break this agreement 4 or 5 years down the line, and this whole war starts again. And then they get forced into signing Minsk 4. Russia does this again. This is what the Ukrainians have said time and time and time again. And if you want a good negotiating position for Ukraine, then we need to supply them with ammo. We need to supply them with equipment, planes, tanks, armored fighting vehicles, you name it. Because the cost of world peace right now and to stopping a potential, NATO-Russia conflict in the future is to arm Ukraine now. Because the price of the conflict now is far cheaper than the one that, from what we have seen, Estonian intelligence has picked up that they want to start a war with NATO. And they are saying 10 years. So, nevertheless, the lies will succeed in dragging out the war. No one wants to drag this war. This whole idea that the West keeps pushing Ukraine into not negotiating is false. Because what Putin wants is the complete unconditional surrender of Ukraine. Putin started this war just saying, oh, he was only going to take Donbass and Luhansk. He has now claimed 2 more further oblasts. What's to stop him from claiming more? You cannot appease someone like Putin. And to echo, again, David Cameron's comments, have we not learned the lessons of appeasement? So, he continues, Congress will approve more funds. Russia will take more territory. They probably will not take more territory if the Ukrainians get that funding. Ukraine will mobilize more young men and women to feed to the meat grinder. Well, so will Russia in far greater numbers, and eventually that will happen. Discontent will now mount, and eventually there will be a crisis in Kyiv, and the Lindsay government will be toppled. First of all, a complete and utter misreading of the Ukrainian will and statement here. If you look at the Ukrainians nationally, they are speaking as one. They do not want to topple the Zelensky government. They want Russia to, sod off. That's putting it lightly. I'm sure Ukrainians would be far, far more vocal about that. The Zelensky government is not going to be toppled because they would recognize the far greater threat that is coming from their border. And also, you're acknowledging, oh, Russia's going to take more territory. Well, hold on a second. Why does now Russia just get to take more territory? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And anyway, it continues. When the war is then finally lost, when the whole country now lays in a smoldering ruins on the funeral pyres of their own making, no, it's the Ukrainians' decision to fight. And so long as they want to fight, we should be willing to supply them with whatever they need. And if anything, the funeral pyre is for the Russians that are dying in far significant more numbers thanks to Western arms and aid. But he continues. The liars will say, well, we tried. Having prevented any alternative, having smeared anyone who told the truth as puppets for the enemy, the liars will say, we did our best, we stood up to Putin. So, what is the alternative? Because the alternative right now, if the Ukrainians went to Putin and said, okay, let's look at a some sort of peace agreement, Putin is not going to give back any of the territory that he's taken. He's going to freeze the line of conflict. And once again, you're going to be in a Minsk situation. And then likely Putin may very well start this conflict again down a couple of years' time. The Ukrainians know what has happened because they've been through this twice. They do not want to have to sign a Minsk 3 and then 5 years' time, the Russians try this again. But maybe in greater numbers, be better prepared and be at least slightly better equipped than they were before. If you want to, quote, come up with an alternative and not be smeared, then maybe you should talk to the Ukrainians about what they want, what their fears are, what they want out of a potential peace agreement, and not just, listening to Putin. Because every single time he has lied about the peace agreements he has put forward. Because any potential peace agreement that has been put forward has been the complete and utter capitulation and sublimation of Ukraine. And if you want Ukraine to be a sovereign country, to be able to make its own decisions, then you cannot stand there and justify anything that Putin has put forward. It's just that simple. But he continues. In fact, they will claim, we would have succeeded, but for the fifth column of Putin apologists who stabbed the Ukrainians in the back. Really, at the moment, it does look like you've got Trump, who has told the MAGA Republicans to hold up this aid. Many of the Republicans do want this aid to go through, but it is being held up by these MAGA Republicans who don't want this aid to go through. Why? Because they want to give Trump a win. Thus, he is backing Putin, and it is still worrying what if Trump wins, what exactly he does in this. Will he back Ukraine? I don't think so. Trump has a history of just throwing US allies under the bus. I don't think that's going to be very good for him, to be honest, to do that. And it's something we in Europe do need to pay a lot of attention to. So he continues by saying, then, having now shifted the blame and pat themselves in the back, they will now blithely move on to the next war, as they moved on into Ukraine after the disasters in Iraq and Afghanistan. The lies are comprehensive, but they will work. This is not like Afghan and Iraq. You've always got to separate wars from what they are and the reality that it is at the moment. The reality is here that Ukraine, a sovereign country, has for years been suffering from direct and indirect interference in their national government and affairs by Russia. And whenever Ukraine does something that Russia doesn't like, they act in this way. That is not an acceptable way to be able to force your influence onto another country by sheer force. That is not what we should be encouraging. If you want genuine world peace, then this is the type of thing you should be horrifically against. The whole spheres of influence should be over. Might makes right, the whole John Meshemer stuff that people like this guy were praising at the beginning of this war, basically just says, yeah, Putin gets Ukraine, it gets a whole other bunch of nations, it gets to decide what they can do and what they can't do. So much for any ideas of, national sovereignty and democracy. Because the Ukrainian people have spoken time and time again. They do not want anything to do with Russia. And especially after this war, they are going to have absolutely zero to do with Russia. And of course, as I said, who endorsed that? Right there, Elon Musk. Accurate. He's posted. I don't know if you can see that there. That to me is so insane. So insane. Um how you can put that forward is blatantly crazy. And what's even worse, this guy has put forward in fact, I'm going to show you this other tweet as well, because this is the other um one he put forward as well. Hang on, let me find it. Uh, 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 uh. Hang on, here it is. So this is his other thing that I saw, because this is highly funny considering what has just happened as well recently. We'll get into that in a moment. So this is his other tweet where he says, F-16s will not change the outcome of the war. The Russians have strong air defense. The Ukrainians only have a handful of trained pilots. Most flights will be suicide missions. The serious experts know this. Ukrainian propaganda accounts erupt every time a Russian plane, boat, or civilian center gets hit. It just doesn't change the situation on the front lines. Russia is winning in the war of attrition. Ukraine is taking horrific casualties and its lines are under pressure everywhere. So here's the thing, saying that, F-16s won't change anything. Well, let's indulge in that fantasy that if F-16s are not going to change the face of the war, then give them more artillery shells, give them more long range missiles. That should help instead, right? Because guess what just happened recently? The Russians lost an A50, I think it's called. This is a look down radar system. This is the big plane with like the big dish on top, and that's the radar that operates. They only have two of those. They've just lost one, shot down by the Ukrainians. They did that with long range missiles and air defense systems supplied by the West. They only have one more left. Now, you can, of course, maybe believe the Russians and say that, the Ukrainians didn't shoot it down. We shot it down. Wait, what? So you can either believe the Russians, and I don't believe the Russians are a thing they have ever said, or you can believe the Ukrainians. We shot it down. Or you can say that the Russian, quote, impenetrable air defense system, which if they had F-16s would be just completely and absolutely suicidal because they have such good air defense systems, it shoots down their own planes. Yeah. Don't believe anything you hear by David Sachs when he's talking about Ukraine. I'm sure he might be a perfectly good expert in the business world or as software as a service when it comes to talking about that. But this guy knows absolutely nothing when it comes to talking about Ukraine. He knows nothing about weapon systems. He knows nothing about the actual state of of the army, what's going on the ground. I doubt he's ever really had even an actual expert on his podcast to talk about this, to talk about the situation, and to talk about what, Putin has said multiple times, that he just wants the complete and absolute sublimation of Ukraine. So yeah, don't listen to that guy. He's an idiot. Doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to Ukraine. So at the moment, I do know NAFO are having fun with him. So yeah, he deserves that, for honestly. But as always, like I say, victory to Ukraine, Slava Ukraine. And let's hope this is the year the war finally comes to an end with, well, a Ukrainian victory. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.